Hi friends, welcome and/or welcome back to my channel. My name is Leah Catherine and this is Leah Sees Movies. Today we're talking about Malcolm and Marie. Malcolm and Marie is written and directed by Euphoria creator Sam Levinson, re-teaming with Zendaya and co-starring John David Washington. The movie follows John David Washington as Malcolm, a up-and-coming film director coming back from his big premiere. However, that night, a bunch of burgeoning issues bubble up in the relationship. Instead of being a celebratory evening, it turns into literally 2 hours of dramatic, pretentious fighting between him and Zendaya's Marie. It really is exactly what it says on the tin. It is 2 hours of a couple, the most unpleasant people fighting. I say unpleasant people, it's mostly Malcolm. He's a garbage man. He's awful, he's pretentious, he's gaslighting, he's manipulating, he's just truly very few redeeming qualities of this character. And as you're watching the movie, you keep thinking, oh, like, is that going to be the point? Is it supposed to be that he's awful and she's gonna leave him or kill him? No, it just seems to be a back and forth of, though they're both trying to get something off their chest, but it's a really uneven relationship, and it seems like the movie isn't even aware of how uneven and how imbalanced this relationship is. It is a pity that a movie that looks this good and sounds this good is so not good. I think the last movie that's made me really feel like this is Joker, where I really enjoyed looking at it. I think it looked very nice. I'd watch the whole thing again on mute if I could. Just, I wouldn't, because that'd be a waste of 2 hours. But it's very pretty, like lots of shots. Gorgeous. They look so, Zendaya and John David are both framed beautifully. The soundtrack, as the couple are fighting, you get these breaks while they'll play songs on their phones that perfectly match the mood. Sometimes too much, a little too on the nose, but generally perfectly match the tone. You're like shazamming the whole way through, like, oh, I want this song, I want this song. It really creates such a wonderful vibe that the dialogue completely undercuts. For one thing, before I get into my many issues with the dialogue, this whole movie is just at volume 11, and when it's not at volume 11, it's because they're talking into each other's mouths, so you have to put the volume up because you no longer understand what they're saying. And then it's a trick, because the minute you put the volume up, John David starts screaming continuously for minutes at a time. Screaming. This movie gave me a headache, and I do not mean that metaphorically. A literal headache. I was reaching for some Advil 48 minutes into this thing. It was just uncut gems level of loud for no apparent reason. This movie is weird because it's supposed to be one night of this couple fighting, but they get into like 4 different fights. As I said earlier about the soundtrack, you get these pauses in the fights where they play songs, relax, take a smoke break, which is cool for establishing the soundtrack, but in reality you get this emotional whiplash because they're fighting. They seem to stop fighting, they make up, you're like, okay, that's the end of the movie, and then something sets one of them off again. And it literally will be like they go to pee and then the other one gets pissed off and you're just like, what happened? And then there's a new fight, and it's always kind of related to the last fight, but just literally a new thing has pissed them off in the 10 seconds that they were off screen. And now we're starting it again, and now we're screaming again. And as I sat there watching it, I kept going, why make this all one night? Why not make it 4 different fights? The movie starts out with literally them arriving at the house, the front door opens, and it begins. So why not just do that a couple times? If you want to have what is essentially 4 different fights, have them come home, fight one. We see the sun go down, sun come up, we see them come home again. I liked that this was a very contained movie. If you want to keep it to all you really know about this world is them, all we know about them is what they're saying, and you can't really trust them. They're unreliable narrators, they're fighting, they're angry. We don't know how they interact in the outside world. We don't get to see any of the history that they're rehashing. We don't get to form our own objective opinion because we're just getting their perspectives, and I'm cool with all of that. But having it in this one emotional whiplash, the tone just kept flipping on me way too quickly. Show that it's 4 different days. It doesn't have to be back to back, doesn't have to be consecutive, but at least if you say these are 4 different fights of this couple over time, they feel like people. getting into multiple different disagreements. You can even do one day they make up and they both go to bed happy, one day they go to bed angry, one day one person's still bitter. We can see how their relationship changes. We can see how each fight affects them individually, but you don't get that because in the span of a lunch break, in the span of a bath, one of them's mad again. The fight just feels like it doesn't really ever come to a natural conclusion. It just stops, takes an intermission, we go again with something else. In addition to how good this movie looks, the performances, I can't really fault them. Zendaya a bit more so than John David. John David holds his own, but I think his character is so reprehensible, it's really hard to root for him. But before we get to that, just in the general concept of performances, they both get these really long monologues, but to the point where it no longer feels like a two-hander. With a movie like this, you're expecting it to be this constant back and forth and them bouncing off of each other, but instead, one character monologues for legitimately 10 minutes, and then there's a break, and the other character monologues for 10 minutes, and they're not even always framed in the same shot. So it could almost be like one person monologued on set one day, and then the next day the other actor came in and did reaction shots. It doesn't feel like they're flowing between each other because they're not very often on sharing the screen, which is a very weird choice because that seems like the point of this movie is to show the relationship and to show the dynamic between these two, but instead it kind of felt like a series of auditions for a different dramatic piece. For anyone who did high school debate, I kept going, is this a DI? Like, this just feels like something someone is going to take and perform on a debate circuit in a couple of years. It didn't really flow for me. When they were together, I think they had a pretty good chemistry. I think they had a very good back and forth, but it seems like the movie skipped out on a lot of opportunities to capitalize on that. Alright, I mentioned it a few times, so we're gonna get to it. I hated Malcolm. Besides the screaming, which was bad enough for a movie that was supposed to be taking place at 1 a.m. because they're poor neighbors. Because he was very courteous, he went outside to scream, so any neighbors they may have had definitely heard him. He was angry, he was verbally abusive, he was emotionally manipulative, he was pretentious. Every fight that they had, you know, she would be like, I feel this way, and he'd be like, you feel that way because you're a selfish, awful person. It was like with every slap she gave, he returned with like a gut punch. It was so unequal the way these two were fighting. You can't even feel like, oh, they both have baggage, because she clearly has baggage, but besides some of her more, you know, profane outbursts, a lot of the time she's talking at a level volume, she's pretty clear about what she's upset about, and in return he's screaming, he's abusive, he's gaslighting her into being like, oh, well, this is actually your fault. And then at the end, it's so insidious. It's like, it's because I love you and I'm the only one who ever could. And I'm just watching it like, what is this tangled Mother Gothel abuse? Like, this is abuse, and it's supposed to be romantic, I think, because they kiss at the end. It was really baffling. I really couldn't tell if the movie knew it was depicting abuse, because it didn't come out that way. It just came out of them at the end of every fight giggling and being like, you're so crazy, but you're the only one who could get me. And it's like, this isn't a situation of two weirdos in love. These are two extremely toxic people who are only going to make each other worse. And Malcolm specifically, garbage person. I was waiting for her to stab him. At one point she picks up a knife. No joy. As the marketing for this movie began to roll out and reviews began to come in, people began to remark on the age gap between Zendaya and John David Washington, her 24 to his 36 or 37. And it's a pretty reasonable observation because it definitely impacts every element of the relationship. At one point in the film, Malcolm talks about the fact that he found Marie as a barely 20 drug addict. Meanwhile, she, in response to all of his abuse, says, well, you know, you're the only person I've known because you're the only person to ever loved me like this, because she started dating him at 20. At another point in the film, as a revenge tactic, he lists a long string of ex-girlfriends and ex-loves as a way to show that she doesn't mean, you know, that much to him, that she's just one of many. And it's all emphasized by that age gap. It's something that you can tell impacts relationship. The fact that she seems completely financially reliant on him. She doesn't seem to have a career of her own. The last 5 years of her life have all been based around this man. And you think with those lines in the script that would play into it, that that's something that they were intentionally trying to remark upon. But instead there was a lot of, no, Zendaya's grown now. Zendaya herself saying, you know, I'm an adult now, people just don't like seeing me that way because I was on Disney. And yeah, there's some things where you go, oh my gosh, she used to be on Shake It Up. The issue isn't her doing sex scenes. The issue was that the age gap and everything about it, the power imbalance that it indicated, was just woven throughout the film. And the fact that they went through so much effort and pains to ignore that, to downplay it, was really baffling to me, because it's in the script. I don't understand why it wouldn't have been easy to just say, yeah, that age gap was entirely intentional. I was cast first when we were looking for a partner. We wanted someone a little older to help show how the relationship was a little fractured. It's not a flaw of the film necessarily, because as I said, as I watched it, it seemed like the film was aware, it seemed like the dialogue and script were aware of that and were making a point of it. The fact that when it was brought up in marketing, they doubled down on, no, that's not what it's about. They're both adults here, that it doesn't even come into play, seems not only confusing to me, but contradictory to what was in the script. While this movie stars a black couple, it is hard to forget that it is written by a white man. And that really comes into play as Malcolm tries to give his philosophy on race and art. There's a lot of, it doesn't matter what your identity is, it matters what's on the page, it matters what's on the screen, which just feels like the director yelling at you saying, it doesn't matter that I'm making the characters black, I'm allowed to write about this, which is totally true. A white director can write black characters, there's no issue with that. But when you use those black characters to basically absolve yourself of any potential criticism, and it really feels like he's just yelling at you through the screen. It doesn't feel like the character of Malcolm, it doesn't feel like John, it feels like a white writer telling you, I can do this because it's art. And it's not art, it's a lecture, and it's a bad one. At one point, Malcolm gets a good review where a film critic says that his movie subverted the white savior trope, and he gets mad at it because he said, they're only saying that because I'm black. So I didn't subvert the, so is he saying he did want to do the white savior trope? Is the character of Malcolm saying he intentionally used the white savior trope? Was it his intention to lean into it? Why is he mad that they think he's subverting it? And that's never explained, because the real issue here isn't the character's art, it's what the writer is telling you is his art and why it's valid and why he can give you his nuanced takes on race and art criticism. I kept asking, who is this for? Because a black audience will clearly be able to smell the inauthenticity, which of course is another subject of the film. What is authenticity? And it's weird because the character of Marie brings it up to say that your authenticity, your experience, plays into the way the art is written, it plays into the nuance and gives a very good performance of why her real life experience brought weight to something and it brought weight to her art. So in the film, authenticity is given validity, but then at the same time, it's thrown off as something stupid, again by Malcolm, the self-insert character of the white writer. What? This movie was a mess of contradictions, gaslighting, emotional abuse, and yelling. It looked good, it sounded good, it was performed well. But I would not recommend this to anyone. I think if you've gone the week without watching it, if you've seen the bad things on Twitter and just needed one more voice to say don't do it, don't do it. There's a lot of other things to watch. Don't waste your time. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. If you like, please like and subscribe. If you don't want to, but you've watched all the way to the end of the video, thank you. I still appreciate you. You can follow me on Twitter at Leah Sees Movies, and I'll catch you next time. Peace!